What if the most powerful key to mental clarity, inner peace and spiritual awakening has been with you all along, quietly guiding you with every breath, waiting for you to finally notice it? For thousands of years, sages, warriors, and mystics from every corner of the world have turned to the breath, not just as a biological process, but as a sacred bridge between body and consciousness. There's a reason they all arrived at the same truth. Within the silence between each inhale and exhale lies something extraordinary. You're about to uncover how the simple act of breathing, especially the stillness between breaths, can reset your nervous system, quiet the mind, and reconnect you to something deeper than thought. This is a shift you can feel immediately, and it only gets stronger with practice. So pause and pay attention. Let this be the moment where you stop breathing on autopilot and begin breathing with purpose. What unfolds next might just change how you relate to yourself and the world around you. Take a deep breath, not the unconscious kind that keeps you alive, but one you truly feel. Notice how the air flows in, filling your chest, moving through your body like a wave of invisible energy. Now, release it slowly. Let that exhale be intentional, deliberate, as if you're syncing your heartbeat with the rhythm of something much larger than yourself. Now, here's a question most people never ask. What happens when the breath stops? Not in the sense of death, but in that momentary stillness between breathing in and breathing out, that subtle pause, that space where time feels suspended. For millennia, wisdom traditions have pointed to that silence as something sacred. More than just a break in airflow, it's been described as a threshold, a secret passageway to deeper layers of the self. Throughout history, breathwork has been revered not merely as a bodily function, but as a spiritual tool, a kind of inner technology. Those who paid attention realized that in between each breath lies a doorway, and through that doorway, an entirely different state of awareness begins to unfold. Long before science began mapping the lungs or measuring oxygen levels, ancient cultures understood something profound about breath. It wasn't just air. It was life force. It was spirit. In India, sages spoke of prana, a subtle energy that flows not just through the body but through the entire universe. In China, they called it ki, the invisible current that sustains all living things. In Hebrew traditions, it was ruach, the divine breath that gives life to creation itself. Across continents and centuries, breath was never just a biological act. It was a bridge between the visible and the unseen. Yogis in the Himalayas practiced pranayama, breath control, not just for physical health, but to dissolve the boundaries of ego and access a state called moksha, liberation from the endless cycle of suffering. They believed that by mastering breath, one could redirect the vital current flowing through the nadis, subtle energy channels, to awaken a higher self. In Taoist practice, breath was used to store and refine energy, to slow aging, and to achieve balance with the natural world. Through disciplines like Qigong, ancient Chinese masters used the breath to align the body with cosmic forces, and they believed the real power wasn't just in inhaling or exhaling, it was in the stillness in between. Even in the mystical branches of Christianity and Judaism, breath was treated as divine. Monks synchronized their breathing with prayer to reach states of blissful union. Kabbalists wrote about the breath of God, animating all things, different words, different symbols, but the same message. Control the breath and you open a channel to something far greater than yourself. Transformation doesn't happen while you're breathing in, nor as you're breathing out. It happens in the stillness between the two, that fleeting silence where the body suspends action and the mind lets go of its grip. It's easy to overlook. But within that brief interval lies a profound shift. This pause, barely a second long, and is more than a physiological gap. It's a neutral zone where time feels irrelevant and thought fades. The ancient texts didn't treat this as coincidence. They saw it as the moment the veil lifts. It's in that still point, that complete stillness, where the self begins to dissolve. And what remains isn't emptiness, it's clarity, presence, and awareness without identity. Breath practices throughout time have emphasized this moment. In yogic systems, it's called kumbhaka, the intentional holding of the breath, not as a test of endurance, but as a way to tap into a deeper dimension of being. There are two main types: antar kumbhaka, holding the breath after inhalation, a phase of inner retention where energy moves inward and upward; bahya kumbhaka, holding the breath after exhalation, where emptiness prevails, and the mind is stripped of its habitual movement. The second is where the most profound internal shift can occur. Without breath, without thought, the ego has nothing to cling to. That moment becomes a reset, a quiet confrontation with the essence of what you are beyond identity. Mystics knew this. They sought not to escape life, but to pause long enough to remember what it feels like to truly be. What happens inside the body when the breath is held isn't mystical, it's measurable. And the more we learn about it, the more modern science begins to echo what ancient teachers have said for centuries. When you pause your breath, not out of panic but with calm intention, a cascade of internal shifts takes place. Carbon dioxide levels gently rise, and that triggers a subtle, beneficial stress response. It's controlled, it's safe, and it awakens the body's inner pharmacy. Neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin are released, inviting calm and even euphoria. Brainwave patterns shift. The nervous system slows down. You stop reacting and start noticing. In that stillness, your mind becomes quieter, more focused. Monks in Tibet have practiced this for ages, not as theory, but as survival. They use breath to generate inner heat in sub-zero temperatures. Through a technique called tummo, they can dry soaked blankets with body warmth alone. This isn't metaphor. It's been recorded, measured, and still puzzles researchers today. In feudal Japan, samurai warriors trained in ibuki breathing, a technique of sharp inhalation followed by deliberate retention. It wasn't about power. It was about sharpening focus, grounding themselves before stepping into battle. Every breath was calculated, and in that control they found clarity. Across the globe, Sufi dervishes spun in circles, their breath guiding the rhythm of trance. In the Americas, shamans controlled breathing to open gateways into altered states, where visions weren't just possible, they were expected. Different techniques, same discovery. The breath, and especially its pause, holds the key to altering perception, accessing insight, and awakening dormant capacities that science is just beginning to understand. So how can this ancient knowledge be applied in real life? What can you actually do with it? The answer is simpler than you'd expect. Start with your breath. Breathing reflects your emotional state, shallow and fast when you're anxious, deep and slow when you're calm. But here's the twist. It's not a one-way street. Change your breathing and you can change your emotional state. The body listens. One of the most powerful tools for internal regulation is a structured breathing practice that includes retention. It's not about holding your breath to prove something. It's about using rhythm to unlock access to deeper awareness. Here's a basic method to start with. A variation of kumbhaka, the yogic practice of conscious breath retention. Inhale. For 4 seconds, imagine drawing in clean, vital energy. Hold for 8 seconds. Visualize that energy spreading through your entire body. Exhale for 6 seconds. Release tension. Let go of what no longer serves. Pause for 4 seconds. Sit in the stillness, in that pure suspension between breaths. Repeat this pattern for 10 to 15 minutes daily. As you do, subtle but powerful changes begin to emerge. Your thoughts lose urgency, your nervous system relaxes, and your inner world becomes quieter. Why does this work? Because in that breath hold after exhaling, when oxygen dips slightly and carbon dioxide rises, the body enters a mild, safe hypoxic state. This triggers biological responses that enhance immunity, increase lung capacity, and most importantly, still the mind. For yogis, the pause after the exhale is the golden moment. It mimics ego death, a brief harmless silence in which the constant chatter disappears. Some practitioners even report fleeting glimpses of boundlessness, a sensation of dissolving into the present. The practice doesn't require a monastery. You can do it in your room, in your car, or before a meeting. The moment you control your breath, you reclaim the power to regulate your energy, perception, and presence. You don't need to vanish into the mountains or live in silence for years to experience what breath mastery offers. The same techniques used by monks, warriors, and mystics throughout history can be integrated into your day, quietly, subtly, effectively. Feeling anxious before a conversation? Try 5 slow, steady breath holds, just 5. Watch how your mind slows down, your voice steadies, and your body relaxes. Waking up in the morning, start your day with 10 minutes of breath retention. Let that become your mental reset. More effective than caffeine and far more sustainable, struggling to fall asleep at night. End your day with breath awareness, slowing down your breath, especially lengthening the pause after exhaling, gently pulls your nervous system into rest mode, easing you into deeper sleep. These aren't gimmicks. They're ancient techniques proven by experience and now backed by science. Spiritual teachers have often said it takes 40 days to root a practice into your life. So here's the challenge. Spend the next 40 days with just 15 minutes of mindful breathing. Hold space for the silence between breaths and witness how your perception, energy, and emotional resilience begin to change. What you're doing isn't just calming the mind. You're touching a part of yourself that's usually buried under noise, a version of you that isn't reactive, anxious, or distracted, a version that's quiet, centered, and clear. The breath has always been more than air. It's a code, and you now have the first key. Now that you understand the power behind the pause, it's time to experience it. This isn't about ideas anymore. It's about direct application. Subtle shifts begin the moment you make the breath a conscious act. And when you stretch that quiet space between breaths, you invite something deeper to rise. Breath has always been the connector between body and mind, between energy and intention. In Eastern systems, it's called prana or ki. Western mystics speak of it as the divine current that sustains life. Regardless of language, it points to the same force. The breath is more than physical. It carries awareness. Here's what's fascinating. Slowing your breath and lengthening the spaces between creates room, not just in your lungs, in your perception. Thought slows, emotion softens. You become more present. There's an old belief that we only get a set number of breaths in this lifetime. Breathe fast, live fast, burn out quickly. But those who breathe slowly, who hold their breath with intention, they extend not just their life but their clarity. This is where the Kumbhaka technique comes in. It's not breath holding for the sake of it. It's structured, intentional, and deeply transformative. Sit comfortably. Keep your spine tall but not rigid. Breathe in slowly and completely. 4 seconds. Hold the breath. 8 seconds. Feel the energy move inside. Exhale gently. 6 seconds. Release with ease. Pause after the exhale. 4 seconds. This is the gateway. Stay in it. Repeat. Stay with the cycle for 10-15 minutes. Don't force anything. The goal isn't how long you hold. It's how aware you are while holding. You may notice the mind quieting. You may feel warmth spread through your body. Some people describe a floating sensation. Others simply feel still. And that stillness, in itself, is a revelation. Kumbhaka is not just a practice. It's a method of shifting how you experience reality. The more you return to the pause, the more it begins to change you from within. There's a moment barely noticeable at first, when the body finishes exhaling and doesn't yet inhale. In that stillness, something extraordinary begins to happen. That pause isn't just a break in breathing. It's a doorway. And the longer you stay with it, the more it opens. Yogis have a name for this space, shunya, the cosmic void. It's where identity begins to fade and pure awareness emerges. You're not trying to become anything. You simply are. Inhale, you take in. Exhale, you let go. Pause, you exist without doing either. It's in that non-doing where transformation starts. Over time, this moment stretches, and with each breath cycle, your sense of self becomes more fluid, less bound by time, thought, or emotion. Want to feel this? For yourself? Try this. Sit quietly. Let your body relax, but stay awake. Exhale completely. Don't inhale right away. Just stay in the silence. Wait until your body asks for breath. Breathe in gently. Repeat. Do this for 5 to 10 minutes. No force, no expectation. Just presence. As you practice, you'll notice how the mind begins to cooperate. Thoughts slow. The inner noise dims. And for a few moments, there's only stillness, the kind you can't manufacture or fake. The kind that feels like standing at the edge of the infinite. This isn't a metaphor. In advanced states of consciousness, practitioners report a suspension of breath that occurs naturally, not out of willpower, but because the body no longer needs to breathe. Time dissolves. The boundary between self and world vanishes. In the yogic tradition, this is samadhi, not an idea, but a state where awareness expands beyond body and mind. Some claim to have entered such deep absorption that their breath stopped for hours or days. To science, it's a puzzle. To the mystics, it's confirmation. The common thread? Stillness. Not just physical, existential. And within that stillness lies a truth. You're not the breath, the thoughts, or even the awareness watching them. You are the space they arise in. Every breath you hold and every pause you stretch is a step closer to remembering that. You followed the breath to its edge, into silence, stillness, and that mysterious space where the world seems to vanish. Now comes the most subtle shift of all, realizing that in that stillness, something ancient and alive awakens. All great spiritual paths speak of this. In ancient Vedic texts, in Taoist inner alchemy, in the whispered teachings of desert monks, breath is more than survival. It's the threshold between what you think you are and what you've always been. Most people never notice their breath. It reflects their mind, scattered, shallow, chaotic. But those who learn to slow it, to pause without fear, begin to sense something else moving beneath the surface. Not thought, not emotion, awareness. And as the body settles into that stillness again and again, a deeper realization emerges. The breath doesn't carry you into presence. The absence of breath reveals it. Over time, a strange peace sets in. Not the calm after solving a problem, but a kind of return. The mind no longer dominates. The need to fix, explain, prove, it fades. What remains is presence. And in that presence, identity loosens its grip. You begin to see. The breath isn't your lifeline, it's your teacher. It mirrors your state and offers a way home. A quiet practice becomes a profound unveiling. You are not the roles, not the body, not even the thinker of thoughts. You are the stillness beneath all of it. Some call it pure consciousness. Others, divine awareness. The name doesn't matter. What matters is that in the pause, that breathless space, the illusion of separateness dissolves. The body may still breathe, the mind may still whisper, but something in you no longer identifies with either, and that is awakening. Now that you know this, not just as information, but as a living possibility, the choice is yours. Will this remain a beautiful idea, or will you step into it? The breath is waiting, the silence is already here, and the truth of who you are has never left.